option you could choose from is P5, which is Advanced Performance Management. Now, I teach this, so I can talk quite a lot about P5. Start off with, what's P5 all about? Well, I've copied in here, just straight from the syllabus, what the aim of the paper is. Without reading it all out, it says to apply relevant knowledge, skills, and expertise in selecting and applying strategic management accounting techniques in different business contexts, and to contribute to the evaluation of the performance of an organisation. Okay, what does that actually mean? Well, briefly, what does it mean? If you think back to paper F5, we did a lot of management accounting techniques in paper 5, like activity-based costing or different types of budgeting. And we talked about those in F5 in a sort of very theoretical way. In P5, we are again talking about those and more, but we're talking about whether or not they're relevant to a particular organisation now. So rather than just whether they're good or bad in generic terms, we're trying to apply our knowledge to much more lifelike scenario type questions. And as it says here, it does build on the knowledge you've got from paper F5, but P5 also includes a lot of material from paper P3. In fact, if you've done P3 recently and you've done F5, you may well find that there isn't a lot of stuff in the syllabus for P5 that you don't already know. So unlike P4, where there's a lot of new material, there isn't actually a lot of new material in P5. But as I'm going to explain, that doesn't mean it's actually an easy paper. Now, again, let's just run through what's in the syllabus for P5. Okay, so it starts off with part A, strategic planning and control. Well, perhaps the most interesting part of this part of the syllabus is budgeting. So again, we talk about all the different types of budgeting as we did at paper F5, but we also introduced this thing called beyond budgeting. Now, beyond budgeting is a model that was developed by two academics from Harvard Business School who claimed that traditional budgeting is not relevant in the modern business world. And they come up with their own model called the beyond budgeting model. So that's a very important area. We also talk about changes in business structure. So what's happened to businesses over the last 50 years and how has that affected management accounting? Now, within that section, we also talk about some stuff which you'll be aware of from paper P3, because we've got Porter's value chain in there. And we've also got a little bit about business process re-engineering and so on. So there's quite a lot of P3 stuff in here. We talk about IT, not in any great technical detail, but we just need to be aware of the different types of IT available to the accountant. And our other environmental and ethical issues, well, that's P1 stuff. So talking about stakeholders and the different stakeholder groups, and that will impact on a company's strategy. So again, you'll know that from paper P1. Then we come on to the second part of the syllabus, economic, fiscal, market and environmental factors. Well, the good news here is this is straight from P3. So things like Pestel analysis or Porter's 5 forces. In the June exam, there was a question where the examiner asked you to analyse an organisation using Porter's 5 forces. So, and actually it was the best well done question, probably because it comes from P3. So anyway, in section B of the syllabus, we're looking at how the environment might affect the performance of an organisation. Right, the next part of the syllabus, part C, this is a fairly short part of the syllabus, talking about performance measurement systems and design. So in other words, what we really look at here is the different sources of information that are available and what information is relevant to a particular organisation. It also mentions reports there. The way this is tested is very practical. In the last exam, there was a question where the examiner actually gave you a report that a company was producing, and he said, discuss this report, evaluate this report. Is it a good report or not? So that's what goes on in section C. But like I say, it's not a particularly big part of the syllabus. Part D, though, is perhaps the key. This is a key part of the syllabus for P5, strategic performance measurement. Now again, a lot of this you already know the foundations of from paper F5, but it builds on those. So we've got financial performance measures, which you already do know from paper F5. There are one or two additional ones, but really that's pretty much F5. Divisional performance evaluation and transfer pricing. Again, pretty much F5 with a little bit of extra things. In divisional performance evaluation, for example, we've got something called economic value added. So we do have a new measure there, but apart from that, it's pretty much F5. We do go into more detail at P5 about non-profit organisations. So things like public sector bodies and charities, and how performance management in those organisations would differ from commercial organisations. And finally, quality. An important part of performance management is managing the quality of an organisation. So we talk about total quality management. And again, we do touch on some areas which were covered in F5, such as we talk about throughput accounting, we talk a little bit about just-in-time, and we talk about target costing. So that's section D of the syllabus. So section D is a fairly big part of P5. And also section E is also a big part of the syllabus for P5. So performance evaluation and corporate failure. Now to start off, it says here with balanced scorecard. You may remember the balanced scorecard from paper 5 and similar frameworks. Well, we've got a few additional frameworks in paper P5 which aren't in F5. So for example, there's something called the performance prism and the performance pyramid. So a few more frameworks. Activity-based management, which is an application of activity-based costing, which you're aware of from F5. And then we've got some strategy models. Now those strategy models are actually from P3. We've got the Porter's 5 Forces, Boston Consulting Group Matrix, and Ansof's Product Market Matrix. Obviously in P5 we're looking at those not so much as strategy models, but more as performance management models. So there's a slightly different angle to them, but frankly it is pretty much P3. And then something which is new is corporate failure. And we look at some corporate failure models for predicting corporate failure. Okay, and then the last part of the syllabus, again, as with P4, we've got this part which is current developments. And the current developments in P5 syllabus tend to talk about environmental management accounting, which again was in syllabus for F5. There isn't really anything new there if you knew the F5 stuff. But there's a bit more information about public sector, because in the last 20 years in many countries, governments have started to introduce a lot more performance management within the public sector. So that's discussed in the final part of the syllabus.